over the years of our relationship with him, so many unbelievable things have happened. And I will share with you some of the stories. I'm going to give you a little background about Father Ephraim, and then share some of the experiences that we had with him here at our parish, and also when a group of us went to Mount Athos to visit him back in 1983, which was quite a remarkable experience in and of itself. But we want to kind of give you an overview of a lot of this that's happening, because, you know, we read about the saints and we think about them as, you know, hundreds of years ago, and we read about the miracles and we think, oh, well, that happened so long ago. What does that have to do with us? How does that affect our daily lives here in America? You know, and are there saints today? And I can emphatically say, yes, there are saints. There are a lot of them. Many of them, most of them are probably secret or hidden. But every now and again, one of them will rise to the top and will appear before us in a way that makes it very clear that they are blessed by God in a very special way, and that they have their own apostolic ministry. They are apostles. So I'm going to begin a little bit with Father Ephraim and tell you a little bit of the story and share with you occurrences that we had with him. Father Ephraim was born in Volos, Greece, from a very pious mother and a very irreligious father. His father didn't go to church, maybe once a year for Pascha. His father was adamantly opposed to his becoming a monk. And in fact, when he did go to Mount Athos, he had to sneak there with the blessing of his mother. And his father sent the police to try to get him back. He was 19 years old. And when he went to Mount Athos for the first time, this person, we'll tell a little bit about him here. The focus is, now this is an old picture. This is Elder Joseph the Hesychast, Iosifo Isachistis, Hesychast. They practiced silence. He lived in caves. He had a very austere life. He spent all night praying. They would pray 8 hours, they'd have a vigil at night. They would break their day up into 2 different periods. But at night they were all up praying the whole night. They fasted very, very strictly. They lived in the most unbelievable circumstances of hardships. But because of their desire to come into union with God, the elder Joseph had such unbelievable experiences of God that he influenced a whole generation of monks on Mount Athos. Mount Athos was dying. At the end of World War II, the Holy Mountain had just a few monks left. And then with people like Elder Joseph, there was a resurgence. So you had this 19-year-old boy, his name was John. He was born on the feast day of St. John the Baptist, on the birthday of St. John the Baptist, June the 21st. And from a very, very young age, he wanted to become a monk. This is the little kid. And he would watch his mother. His mother was so pious that she stayed up all night praying and fasting. And so the influence of his mother was so powerful on him that he also had the desire to dedicate himself to God and to one day go to a monastery. So during this time of meditation and prayer in his own life, and with the blessing of his own spiritual father in Volos, he decided the time had come. And he had to make his way to Mount Athos. Now, even before he got there, Elder Joseph, and this was before cell phones, before they had communication with the Holy Mountain. You could write letters, but there really was no other kind of communication back in the 40s. Elder Joseph said to his one of his monks that were part of his little group, he said, I want you to go down to the dock today and wait for Yanaki. Yanaki is coming. In other words, John, little John, is coming. So he will come. He arrives after a very difficult separation from the family. And Father Arsenios Goes down there and he sees the little fellow coming, because Father Ephraim was very short. And he said, "We've been waiting for you." And they had received him into the fellowship of the few handful of monks that they had there. Now, because of the great influences in his life, he already had a good start. But my first experience with him, and our first experience, began in 1982. I still remember the date, October the 16th, 1982. Myself and other clergy and lay people drove to York, Pennsylvania in order that we could see Father Ephraim. We heard about him, people were talking about him. He had been coming to Canada from '79 for medical reasons. But now he started coming to the United States in the early 80s for the first time. So a small group of us went to meet him. We arrived at the church, and he was hearing confessions. So the host priest took us into the room. And the room was dark when he was hearing the confessions, a little room. And as soon as Father Ephraim saw me, he jumped up and he knelt down to me to kiss my hand. And I was shocked. I said, "Oh my gosh, he's kneeling to kiss my hand," And I was so shocked at his humility. I couldn't believe it. And then he started saying things to us about our group. And he said to one of our company, he said, "You priests have to be united with your presbyteros." He knew that one of our priests, I won't mention any names, who was part of our little group, his wife had divorced him. He knew it right away, and he could feel the pain. And the priest that was with him just broke down crying. He just couldn't get over it, because he immediately knew what was going on without us telling him anything. He understood. And this is one of the gifts that Father Ephraim has, and you'll hear more about that when we go a little further. But anyway, that was our experience. So he came to Holy Cross. He came in for the first time to our little social hall down below. It was before we built this. And all these people showed up for confession. He would start confessions in the morning. We would line up, and we'll get a number, and then they'd sign their name on the list, and he would start hearing the confessions. And we had some unbelievably dramatic things occurring during these confessions. The reason why I know is because I was the translator for at least half of them, because many of the people that came didn't speak Greek. But even before they came in, many times, he could tell them what their sins were. And even when they hid sins, when they didn't want to say something that they were embarrassed by or ashamed of, he said, "Didn't you forget to tell me something?" And they would stop and think, "Oh no, he knows." And that's exactly what happened. But there was one case in particular that was very, very dramatic that I would like to share with you today. In this particular case, the hall was filled. It was a man from Greece living in the United States, very emotional when he came in. You could just see, he's just like, in a state of turmoil, emotionally speaking. This man raised his hand after Father Ephraim addressed us, as he would do every time that he would come. He would give a little presentation on a certain theme: prayer, fasting, spiritual warfare, and so forth. So this man got up and just opened up his heart in a very tearful way. He says, "Father Ephraim, I'm an atheist. I don't believe in God. Is there anything that you can tell me that would give me some encouragement? And if you could, and I can believe, I know many other people that are like me, and I could share what you tell me with them." So the man was talking and talking. And now when Father Ephraim was there, I was sitting right next to him. And I was noticing that before this man got up, he was very tired. Father Ephraim was kind of slouched over. He was kind of, like you could see he was very tired. But as soon as that man started talking, Father Ephraim started going like this. And he just got sort of like a second wind. And he listened to the man. And after the man was done, he took the microphone And he gave this most eloquent explanation of why we need to believe in God. Talked about the creation. Talked about if you see a beautiful building, you know that there was an architect who designed it. That even though you never met the architect, you know that he was going on in this kind of a vein. And he spoke so eloquently, and the man was really deeply moved. So Father Ephraim poked me and he said, if he comes tomorrow morning when I'm doing confessions, bring him in right away. Don't wait for him, just let him go through the line and let him go right in. So sure enough, the following morning, the man showed up. He went into confession and he was in there for a long time. And he came out crying and crying. But something happened to him. Shortly thereafter, this man who now was believing became very ill. He had cancer. And he was dying in the hospital. He was in a coma. And the priest from the parish went over to see him. And thinking that he was, not going to live much longer, he brought the Holy Communion, but he wasn't sure if the man would be able to take the communion because, he was in that kind of a coma state. But he woke up, he took the communion, and then after the priest left, shortly thereafter, he got up and he stood up and he chanted the doxology when lay in the bed and died. Father Ephraim, from before, he said he knew something was going on with this guy, but he understood and he acted in the right way. But there are other cases too. There was another woman from our parish, I won't give you the name. She was being treated for cancer, but she was doing okay. Her sister called up and said, could you please come over? And I didn't want to bother Father Ephraim because all these people were waiting to see him and they were talking with him and it was a long night. And I said, there's a woman nearby, she wants to see you. He says, let's go. He got all excited. He said, we have to go. I said, oh, I don't think I know where she lives. and I didn't know where she lived. So we're trying to find out where she lived and we got lost. But finally we get to the house. We go in. He goes in to see her. We close the door behind him. He comes out a little while later and he goes to me in Greek, "Ine έτοιμη." Give her communion quick. She's ready. And I'm thinking, oh, okay, well, she wasn't going to die right away. She died in a couple of days, just like that. And he knew she was going to go. I have many stories like this that I can share with you, but this is just a couple that come to mind right now. So anyway, getting back to our experience with Father Ephraim, one of my co-travelers is here with us, Tom Chakos, was on that first trip with us, where there were 10 of us that went. Priests and lay people in a historic visit. And we got them on Athos. We didn't know what we were going to experience. It was just like a big adventure. It was like the Americans were coming, and what was Mount Athos going to do with us? Because we had never been there before. So they ushered us into the church, and all the monks are staring at us, and we're thinking, oh, these guys must think that we're really strange because, we're coming from America. We don't know too much about the monastic world. And why is Father Ephraim showing so much and giving so much attention to them? This was like our big surprise. Because the monks themselves wouldn't approach the elder. It's not like he's your buddy, you put your arm around him, and you have a nice chat. It didn't work that way in the monastery. The life is very disciplined, it's very strict, and your interaction with the elder is always very serious. But then they saw their elder laughing with us, having a good time, taking good care of us, and they were just amazed. And we figured, well, maybe he had to show us to the others so they could see why he went to America, so he can get an idea of the work that needs to be done when he saw us. So sure enough, I was there the night of the vigil of the Annunciation, the feast day of the Annunciation on the Old Calendar. Now this was a remarkable experience for me, one that I will never forget, indelibly etched in my mind and in my heart. This is a photograph of that day. You might see somebody in there that you recognize. And I'll tell you top, level and layer of the monks were all clergy, and they're in the altar, we're all crowded in there. And I wasn't going to go in, but the Father Ephraim came and said, "No, you go inside too." I didn't want to go in because I was afraid to go in there. It's one thing when you're at home and you go into the altar here, in Holy Cross, but to go in there with all these holy people, it's not a good idea. So I went in there, and I noticed that during the liturgy, especially during the time of the consecration of the gifts, I heard these men sobbing, grown men sobbing, weeping. What's going on here? And I looked down at the floor, the concrete floor, the little tile floor there. It was wet from tears. That's how much they were crying. I said, "Oh my gosh, what am I doing here?" And I still had to see if there was a door that I could sneak out somehow or other, because I had no business there. Then Father Ephraim comes up to me and he said, "I want you to take this out in the procession to the bishop." And he gives me the bishop's crown. See that guy over there with the bishop's crown? You recognize him?
Yeah, that's You had a full beard then?
I was a lot younger then. That was,
You had a full beard.
That was a lot younger.
Yeah, but I thought you had just the
He gives me the bishop's crown. I don't know why he was giving it to me. You're making me a bishop or what? This guy right here, do you know who it is?
That's you.
My own mother doesn't recognize him. It's the world living. So he gives me the bishop's crown. And I'm thinking, why did he do this? What's going to happen here? And he said, "No, you're going to take it out and you're going to give it to the bishop," because there was a bishop on the throne. So we go out, and just as we're leaving the altar, the thought comes into my mind, a little bit of a vain thought. "Oh, I wish I could have a picture of this." And I forgot about it. 2 months later, at home, here in Pittsburgh, I get a letter in the mail from Greece. I opened it up. No letter, no note. That picture. Just like that.
Wow.
2 months later. Totally unexpected. So that's the one that I have there. So, needless to say, our experience with Father Ephraim was just unbelievable. He had, when he came to Holy Cross, profound effect on people. Whenever he would enter a room, it would light up with his loving presence. And he seemed to know what to say to each person. He could communicate with them and say to them exactly what they needed to hear. Even when you were sitting down and sharing a meal with him, you would be in total silence, but yet, even sitting in silence with someone like this is an edifying experience. At the end of that liturgy, which was like I was on my feet for like almost 16 hours, because it was an all-night vigil, I felt like I didn't need to sleep. And we went, during that time, the most beautiful chanting you could have ever imagined, all the best chanters from all over Monastery. And they had an icon there that was gushing myrrh, and you could smell the myrrh in the air. And with all these holy people who were caught up in the environment and the way the priest reacted when it was time to consecrate the holy gifts, it was overwhelming. And then at the end of this time, we all were gathered into a hall for a little break, a little kind of like coffee hour kind of thing. And nobody said a word. And I'm looking around, these people, unbelievable. They had such an elevated experience of the liturgy that they had no words to share with one another. They were so caught up in the moment. So I went to my room, and I'm thinking about this, and it was the 8th day that I had been on Mount Athos after this vigil. And I opened my Bible up, and it said, "And on the 8th day, Jesus with Peter, James, and John climbed up to Mount Tabor." That was my Mount Tabor right there. So I wanted to share that with you so you can get an idea of what happens when you go to these places. Now, Bishop Maximus was the one that really opened the door for Father Ephraim to come to our metropolis, our diocese at that time. He was the most generous person. Father Bishop Maximus went to see, here at Holy Cross, to see Ephraim, and they talked, they would close the door behind him. He walked out, and Bishop Maximus was shaking. He said, "What kind of a guy is that?" He was just like overwhelmed by it. And then when I talked to Father Ephraim later on, he goes, "O despoti su se horizi apostolos." He said, "Your bishop is above all the other bishops that I've met." That's how much he was moved by that. So anyway, that was our relationship with Father Ephraim, the visit to the monastery. And the effect that it had was very profound, because year after year after year, we were talking with him about the possibility someday of maybe being able to start a monastery in our area. Anybody recognize this?
No.
Who is that?
Maria.
Is that Maria?
So that's my daughter Maria, in case you don't. But what we would do, whenever Father Ephraim would come, we would go to the home of one of the parishioners, usually Millie and Ted Caritas. They would invite us over to their home. And during that time, we would have a fellowship. We would eat a meal, and then he would always give a talk. And I'm referring now, this particular event occurred November the 16th, 1987. In our parish, of course, as I said, was blessed by his visit. He heard confessions in the morning and in the evening. He rested a little bit in the afternoon and he prayed. That was his custom, following the monastic way of life. And he would get up late in the night and he would pray. So when the confession concluded, we would retire again to the social hall. And during that visit, Bishop Nicholas was there, one of his deacons. And so the atmosphere was very, very festive. There was a lot of joy in the air. And the elder's spiritual presence touched many hearts. And many people stood in awe of him, and their faces, they couldn't stop staring at him. Like the way you would look at a holy object, they couldn't get their minds, and some people even saw an aura around him, like a light you could see. I didn't see it, but others told me that they saw it. After the evening fellowship of the church, as I said, we went to the home of Ted and Millie Caritas. God rest their souls. Many of you remember Ted and Millie as very faithful members of our parish at Holy Cross. After our late evening meal, the men would be in one room and we would sit with Father Ephraim and eat there, and then the women would be in the other room and they would have their meal. That's the way they do it in the monasteries. They separate the men from the women. So that's how it was in the house. So we returned to the family room for our allotted time with Father Ephraim's teaching. As usual, we would wait for him to introduce a subject to see what he would like to share with us. Maybe because of the festive mood that prevailed or the joy that filled all of our hearts, Father Ephraim took a different approach this evening. He began chanting a medley of church hymns, started spontaneously. And so we all joined in the spirit of the celebration. The presence of the Holy Spirit filled our hearts with ineffable joy. With each hymn that we sang, we moved to a higher level of prayer and psalmody. Finally, when it seemed that we could ascend no higher, yet our friend surprised us, all of us, here in November, and he ushered in the spirit of Pascha. It was like another Pascha. With great joy, he began singing Christos Anesti. He kept singing it over and over again in different ways. He wouldn't stop, and we're all singing with him. Christos Anesti. It was like unbelievable. Tears welled up in our eyes as the spirit of Pascha permeated all of us. It was again a true Taborian experience. Instead of teaching us this time with words, he took us to new heights and spiritual beatitude by a different route. All who were present knew that they had experienced something unique and unforgettable. And that was Elder Ephraim. Just when you thought you knew what he was going to do, he would do something else. Just when you thought you knew what he would say, he he would hit you with something and tell you something about yourself that you weren't waiting for. And it was always something very penetrating. And he told me when he did confessions, he would not say what came to his mind in the sense that his own personal opinion. He would wait. And if something came to him from the Holy Spirit, then he would speak to the person. And we have many examples of this. Now, many times we in the Orthodox Church are accused of being very too strict with the non-Orthodox people that are in the world. So this one particular day, there was a young lady that came to see Father Ephraim, and she was Roman Catholic. Now, we're going to have to tell Father Ephraim, he'll know anyway when he sees her, we better let him know. And at first he was a little, I'm not sure, I can't really, do a sacrament with her, but let her come in. So the woman came in, she knelt down, and he looked at her, and then he started to speak to her, and then she started confessing to him. And he wasn't supposed to be doing confession, but he let her keep going. And she went going and going and going. And finally, he listened to her, he blessed her, he hugged her, he told her what she needed to do, and she left that room a changed person because he knew exactly what to say to her. She wasn't of our faith, but he could see that her heart was open, and he could tell her something that would be of help to her. So there's an example of the we call it in Greek, the pro-oractico charisma. Pro-oractico charisma. The gift of discernment, where you can see something, you can discern it, spiritually speaking. And that's what he had. He could do that. Now, there are many other things that I can tell you about Father, many stories. There's another one that I would like to share with you. I mentioned this at the monastery when they had the groundbreaking back in September. But I'd like to share this story with you because I think it again will show you more about Father Ephraim and the kind of person he was and the many, many struggles that he had. Look at these two women here. You may recognize them. Mother Macrina to the left Anne, Mother Taxiarchia to the right. Very, very holy, special people. Macrina is the mother of all of the nuns that came from Greece. She was their mother. All of them that came from Greece. And these are the ones that Father Ephraim sent. As you know now, we have 17 monasteries that he founded. 2 in Canada and 15 in the United States. And there's another one that's kind of started up in Arizona that's called the Annunciation in another part of Arizona that's on the way to being established. He also established 8 monasteries in Greece, and he repopulated 4 monasteries on Mount Athos. He also had thousands upon thousands upon thousands of spiritual children all over the world. Russia, Romania, Greece, Canada, the United States. They came from all over. His funerals, we'll talk a little bit about in a moment, had 5,000 people. How do I know the exact number? Because I talked to the person who prepared the food. You remember John Mitchell from Moundsville, West Virginia, who moved out to Arizona? He's been there for quite a few years. He cooked all the food. 5,000 people came to the funeral. Now, no bishop, no priest ever had a funeral like that. People came from all over. They flew in on short notice in order to attend his funeral. Now, Macrina, both of these beautiful ladies have left this life. They died a few months apart from each other. I knew them both very well. Mother Macrina also had the same gifts as Father Ephraim. He had come in order to install the Abbess Taxiarchia at the newly established monastery of our Nativity of the Theotokos. My encounter with Father Ephraim on that day proved to be quite remarkable. It was very uplifting and indeed, I would say, historic for the Greek Orthodox Church in America. As we now know, this fledgling community of these two nuns, Ephraim and Taxikia, would be the first of many these monasteries to be founded in the years to come. And on that day, when I came to the home of the Pateras family, I could not help but notice that Father Ephraim exuded a palpable joy and a great confidence. Caught up in the enthusiasm of the moment, I wondered as to why he was feeling this way, why he was expressing so much joy and beatitude. He then proceeded to tell me of a blessed event the past week when he had been in Greece, in Athens. Now, Father Ephraim had a lot of spiritual struggles in his life. Remember, he arrived in Mount Athos in 1949, and here it is 40 years later. This is a man that fasted, that prayed, that did many vigils, had many health problems, wept for his sins, unendingly. And he had been struggling diligently because he really wanted to establish monasticism and the holy presence of our monasteries in Canada and the United States. He had this kind of dream, a vision, if you will, that he wanted to do this. But he was meeting with a tremendous amount of resistance. And as a result, he was going through periods of struggle, prayer, tears, because there were so many that were against his vision, trying to create this Athonite form of monasticism here. And initially he confessed to me, he said he was very dejected and he was emotionally drained while he was in Greece as a result of personal attacks against him, because we have to remember that a lot of people were attacking him, even his own monks, because he was leaving Mount Athos. And they were so upset. They even, the heads of the monasteries in Mount Athos wrote a letter and asked him to come back. And they criticized him for coming here. Because, in monastic tradition, you're not supposed to leave your monastery. It's like the unpardonable sin. Once you are a monk and you enter your monastery, you're not supposed to go out again. You stay there. So, but the monastery where Father Ephraim was at also had another saint there who did the same thing. Some of you have heard of Saint Cosmas Edolos. Saint Cosmas lived in Philothea, the same monastery. He lived there for 17 years, and he also felt this strong desire to go out, because it was during the time of the Ottoman oppression. The Ottoman Empire was controlling Greece and the all the Balkan countries, and the Greek language was being lost, the faith was being lost, and people were losing their way. And Cosmas wanted to revive and renew the faith and the language of the people. Father Ephraim shared with us in prayer, that Cosmas spoke to him and told him that he should go out and not to be afraid. He took that to be from God, and he began to make his journeys to America, but again, after a lot of criticism, even from his own people. And I have a tape, I have it with me at home, where he explained to the monks, he spent an evening telling them why he had to go. And he told the stories, like I'm telling you, of the people that he met in America, that he felt needed to hear his message and needed to come back into the Orthodox Church. And during this time of crisis in his life, he implored God very tearfully to give him a sign. But there was no answer. God wasn't giving him an answer. Finally, one day when he was in Athens, that previous week that we were talking about, he was on his way to meet Bishop Maximus, who was also in Greece at the same time. And he told me, the way he said it was funny. He said, just as I was going into a taxi cab, he said it came to me that everything was going to be okay. Just like that. I said, wow, maybe I should take a cab ride too. So, from there was another major breakthrough. In some ineffable way, he suddenly knew that he was headed in the right direction regarding his heartfelt aspirations. And his meeting with Metropolitan Maximus bore out the intuition that he had. Our Archbishop Maximus interceded with Archbishop Chakos on behalf of Father Ephraim. He talked to him and asked him to allow him to come and start the monasteries. Our bishop opened the door. Most impressive of all, however, was his visit with Saint Porphyrios. We all know who Saint Porphyrios is. We have his book, Wounded by Love, a classic, one of my all-time favorite books. If you don't have it, you have to get it, you have to read it. Read it again and again. It's a beautiful book, powerful. But he went to see him. This was before he was canonized. He was in Athens, and this was in 1989, and we mentioned that. So, he already knew, Porphyrios already knew why Father Ephraim was coming to see him. He had that gift as well. And he encouraged Father Ephraim to continue to labor in America. He gave him the blessing to go ahead and keep doing this. Furthermore, Porphyrios prophesied, as related to me by Father Ephraim, that by means of the monasteries that would be founded in America, there would be another Pentecost in our church. Another Pentecost. Father Porphyrios, elaborating further on his prophetic inspiration, went so far as to say that people would sell their possessions to promote this mission. And so, he even went on to say that Pittsburgh, with Saxonburg especially, will be blessed because of Bishop Maximus' support of his godly movement. Now listen to this now. I'm listening to all this, and Father Ephraim was like a light. He was like glowing. I could, looking at him, what's going on here? He was glowing. And as he spoke to me, I detected a sweet smelling fragrance like incense in the air all around him. And I remember that very distinctly. And everything that Porphyrios said has happened. Any of the monasteries that you go to that he founded are flourishing. If you go to Arizona, they have more than 50 monks. And he keeps taking them from there and sending them to other places to open up more monasteries. But they keep replenishing with more and more and more. So wherever we go, we see this blessing. It's so hard to start a monastery. It's not like you're opening up a restaurant, It's a different, Greeks like restaurants. They have to open them up. You get a good chef, you get a few waiters and waitresses, and open the store up, and call it the American Grill or whatever, and you start a restaurant. Monasteries are not like that at all. You have to have the right people in the right place with this kind of presence and focus, and this is how they are blessed. And so it is that Father Ephraim has done all of this unbelievable pastoral work. Now, I'm going to show you a few more slides here as well. This is Father Ephraim's mother. She became a nun. Her name is Theophanon. She became a nun. She was the one that was encouraging her son to go to the monastery. When she died and they exhumed her remains, they were fragrant. The scent of sanctity. His mother was a saint. So she had a really big influence on him. We already said that. But that's the way it is. We influence the people around us in a very profound way. This is where Father Ephraim is buried. They built this chapel, beautiful chapel. And in the inside, I don't have a picture of the inside, but if you want to go to the internet, go under Elder Ephraim's funeral, you'll see part of the service. I was there for the 40-day memorial on January the 17th. This is at the St. Anthony Monastery. And the 40th day was the actual day of the feast of St. Anthony. He died 40 days before the feast day.
Wow.
So all the thousands of people came again. We had another vigil and a liturgy in this beautiful chapel. It's a little small building, and he is interred inside there. They have in the lower level, like underneath in the bottom, like a basement. That's where they have his remains. And they have an altar and like a chapel on the upper level, and people, while I was there, just kept going in and praying, leaning up against the building and praying. It was unbelievable, very touching. And then the fervor of people, that they had so much faith that they were there to be in these long services, because the services are long there, you know. And so, what's happening now is that already people have come to recognize in Father Ephraim our next saint. You know, it used to be that it would wait hundreds of years before someone was canonized in the Orthodox Church. But now if you take like Saint Porphyrios, he died in 1992. Saint Paisios was 91. Elder Joseph died in 1959. He was just canonized a couple months ago. And many of the synodia, the Greek word, of Elder Joseph, many of the synodia or his company that were under his spiritual guidance have all been recognized as saints now in our church. So the Elder Joseph has such a profound impact on so many people. But I'm reading a book, and I read a book about the Elder Joseph that was written by Father Ephraim and other monks. And in order to create a strong spiritual presence and to help his monks grow, Elder Joseph was really strict with his monks. And he would yell at them. And he would call them names. And he would tell them to do things, irrational things, to test them. He would keep doing this. And they do that in the monastery, so you shouldn't be too scandalous. That's kind of what they do. So they call you a bad name, it's actually a compliment. Because they think they can work with you, you know. But what he would do was, after he would insult Father Ephraim behind his back, he said, may he be blessed 1,000 times. He would always pray for him. As soon as he insulted him, he would go and he would pray for him. And he said, this one is going to do something that no one else has done. And he already knew it, Elder Joseph. So I'm reading the book. The book is really something. If you ever have a chance, Father Ephraim, some of his reflections on the life of Elder Joseph, as well as many of the other members of that spiritual company that were with the Elder Joseph. And here is our beloved Father Ephraim, laid to rest at the monastery, the very end of his life. A few days before he died, he knew what day he was going to die. He went to look at the church where he was going to be buried. He asked to see where he was going to be buried. And he looked it over and he went back to his room. And about 4 days later, he got up to pray. And when they went into his room, he had already passed away, but he was still standing. He died praying like Saint Seraphim of Seraph when they went into his cell. He was on his knees, holding his cross. He had died in prayer. And that's the way we all want to go. We talk about a Christian ending to our lives. We want to have a clear mind. We want to be spiritually prepared so that the moment when God comes for us, we can leave in that same spirit of peace, ready and willing to go with God at that very moment. So these are just a few thoughts. I have many more stories. I kept notes all the years that I knew Father Ephraim. I kept notes. I have all kinds of stories about him. Things that I heard, things that I saw, things that he said. And, you know, it was a real blessing for me and for my family and for all of us here at Holy Cross to have known Father Ephraim. So if you have a chance to read things about him or some of the things that he himself has written, or even to listen to some of his tapes, there is a tape that I translated for him when he was here in 1992. And if any of you recognize, here's a drawing. Remember Tom Corus? How many of you remember Tom Corus from our parish? Tom Corus. Tom was a very good artist. In 1982, when Father Ephraim first came to visit us, he did a sketch of Father Ephraim, and then he did one of Bishop Maximus, Father Ephraim, and myself all seated and listening to Father Ephraim talk. So if you want to take a look at that, we've kept that all these years. Tom Corris gave that to me. But we have many other things that we could say. Maybe if we take a couple of questions right now, or if anyone would like to ask something about Yom Ephraim, we'd be happy to share with you a couple of things. Manny?
Father, do you want to tell the story on how he founded that monastery, about the water coming out? And
Yeah, the monastery of St. Anthony's has an interesting story. I gave a little bit of the story on Sunday, but I'll repeat it again. They were looking for property in the Sonoran Desert, about an hour and a half out of Phoenix. And Father Ephraim and a group of other people went there. And they went with the real estate agent, and he was showing them the particular piece of property that he wanted to sell to them. While they were looking at that property, they heard church bells ringing, but not there where they were at that property, but somewhere a little further away. So they all heard it, and they asked the real estate agent, "We'd like to look at that other property over there." So he took them over there, and they said, "Is that available?" They found out that it was available for sale, and they bought that property. Now, living in the desert is not easy, because, water is a big issue. And it was a very barren place, if you've ever been there. The only thing close to it was famous for is a federal prison that houses 4,000 people. The prison was built 100 years ago. So you have 4,000 maximum security prisoners in this prison. And that's all there was in that town of Florence. And the property was about 4 miles away from there. So as they began with a couple of mobile homes. That was the beginning of the monastery. And people thought they were really crazy. What are they doing? In the middle of nowhere, they've got these mobile homes. And they're living there. They must be mad. And I heard a lot of it. They needed to find water. So they had a drill in order to see where they could find water. And they were looking and they were drilling in different places. And they found one place to drill, but they didn't get any water. So they were going to take the drill out and go somewhere else. And Father Ephraim said to them, "Keep going further. Don't stop, just keep going." So they kept going down and down and down, about 900 feet. And they hit a river of water. A river. It was like an aquifer. So much water there that now if you see what they're growing, you wouldn't believe it. Acres and acres of olive trees, vineyards, all kinds of plantings, all kinds of palm trees. The whole area. How many of you have been to St. Anthony's in Arizona? Okay, you know what I'm talking about. They keep adding on. Many chapels, gardens, places to walk. And as I mentioned on Sunday, it's the second most visited place in Arizona after the Grand Canyon. That's how beautiful it is. But it's not only beautiful because of the buildings that they put up, but it's beautiful because of the very profound spiritual grace that's there when you walk in those grounds. It's really quite a blessing to be there and to have that experience. So just a few of the stories. Every monastery has its miracles. We have here also in Saxonburg, our Yeronisa Taxiarchia, also a very saintly person. And she's now recognized locally in Pittsburgh as a saint. You know that, right? Taxiarchia is our saint. A local saint. Whether she'll ever rise to being internationally recognized or not, it's another matter. But that's the way it is in the Orthodox Church. It comes from the bottom up, from the people. It's not like in the Catholic Church where the saints are recognized from the top down. It's from the bottom up, from the people, from us that are here. We're the ones that see the saints, and we honor them, and we ask for their intercessions. And I have been with Yeronisa Taxiarchia at her death. And I saw how holy she was, and how when she was laid out for her funeral, beads of myrrh formed on her face when she was dead. People would take cotton from her face and there were healings. And then when they exhumed her remains, one of the people that was part of the unearthing of the remains talked about a fragrance coming out of her tomb. And today, her relics are fragrant. She has miracle-working grace in her remains. That's the Orthodox Church. That's why we don't cremate. We honor the saints. Cremation may be cheaper, but it's not Orthodox. We honor the body. It's the vessel of the Holy Spirit. We see that in our saints. So, among the saints glorified. That was Father Ephraim. Mandy, you had your hand up? Or somebody else? Yeah, Michael?
When did he actually come to the U.S. permanently? What roughly
He came permanently in probably right around 92. And he established the St. Anthony's Monastery in 95. But he had also established one in Toronto, but the first one was here, ours. But he was already committed to coming. And he would spend more time here than he would back in Greece. But ours was the first. We have the blessing of having the first of the many. And as I said, they're all thriving. So again, just to even start one monastery is in itself a remarkable achievement. But to do so many and have such an influence over so many thousands of people throughout the world. You know, he's another St. Cosmas de los Cross. He's come to us like an apostle. And so, for all of us who have known him or have heard about him or reading about him, we know you can ask for his intercessions because he is a man who's been glorified by God. Diane?
The monasteries, are they under the veil of bishop and archbishop?
No, the monasteries, depending on where they are. For example, we have two of his monasteries in Pennsylvania, the one in the Poconos, the Holy Protection, and the one that's here, the Holy Nativity. Both of them are under our Archbishop's office. If you go to Chicago, they have two monasteries there, the one in Wisconsin and another one in Illinois. Both of them are under Bishop Nathaniel. If you go to California, you have two monasteries there, one in the state of Washington and another in California. Those are under Bishop Yassin. So each bishop is the bishop of that monastery, and those bishops are the ones that are commemorated by the services there.
And Arizona?
Arizona is under Yerasimos. Damon?
You had mentioned our Bishop Maximus many times before we were on top. Now, he's not well, but as far as I'm concerned, he's always been a blessing to myself. But I'm visiting him now. Is it still possible to get blessings from him, even though he's not well?
If you want to be with him, he's not able to really give blessings anymore. He's not able to.
The other question is, the Ephraim
Theophanon,
is the mother of Ephraim.
yeah.
Has that anything to do with the applicant's now?
Yes, because he gave her the name that his mother had. He gave it to our abbess Theophanon. I see a hand back there, John.
You put together quite a dossier of notes about Father Ephraim, and I was wondering if you considered writing a book.
It's going to take some time. Been kind of busy lately. But it would be a good, I could certainly, from the Pittsburgh perspective, from our experiences here, there are a lot of stories that we didn't share with you. There are people here that have a lot of stories that they can share with us about Father Ephraim from this community. Who will take over? Good question. I think each monastery has its own spiritual father. So probably from among them, someone will rise. Right now I would say that the one that's kind of the obvious choice would be Father Paisios in Arizona. But there are also some very inspiring abbots from other monasteries like Elder Joseph in Roscoe, New York, at St. Notarius Monastery also. I visited him, and a very special man indeed. But there are others as well. So we have The ones that Father Ephraim picked were very special people in their own right. That's why those monasteries grew. He didn't just put somebody. He would pray a lot before he would put them in. And whatever he felt God was leading him to do, he would assign that person to become the abbot or the abbess of a particular monastery. Yes, Nick?
Did St. Paisios and Elder Ephraim ever talk before?
Pardon me?
Did St. Paisios and Elder Ephraim ever speak together?
Yes, they did, because Paisios lived on Mount Athos as well. So they did have the opportunity to get to know each other, yes. Yeah, all the holy people, they all have kind of like their own kind of like grapevine of their own, you know? They love to see each other and talk to each other and share experiences. I saw another hand back there. Eleni.
What is Archbishop Elpiloforos' attitude towards the monastics here?
Well, I would say it's very positive because he went to the funeral of Father Ephraim and he also went to the 40-day memorial and he spoke very highly. He also had a gathering with all of the monks and nuns, leading monks and nuns of the monasteries, a special meeting with them, and he was very supportive with his remarks and that he would be there to help them and to defend them because there has been a lot of criticism. It's a way of life that's very hard, very demanding. People that don't understand it look at it just like Father Ephraim's father sent the police after him so he wouldn't go to the monastery. That happens a lot. So, just the way it is. You know, it's such a different way of life, but we're all blessed by it. Their asceticism, and in some way or shape or form, we're influenced by that. We see them praying, they pray for us, but then they also inspire us to pray too. But one more question? Anybody? Very good. Well, thank you again for coming out of that cold, wintry night in Pittsburgh. We thank the Zotis family for us being on and we thank Father Michael, who's not with us. He's traveling in Baltimore, but he's represented here by his wife, Lenny. So we thank Father for opening up this event for us here tonight. I thank you all for coming. Many blessings to all of you. And ask for Father's intercessions. I'm sure he'll be there to help us.
And I want to say personally, I was a new convert to Orthodoxy about the time all these events were happening. And I thank you, Father John, for making the pilgrimages you made and bringing that back to us. It was very new to me, coming from the Protestant side, and I didn't understand it, but I've come to in the 40 years I've been around. And I thank God for them because I think they hold the world together. And your experiences of that and bringing that back to us, I thank you. Thank you.